So you're deciding whether to move to Los Angeles or Miami, or you're thinking about moving from one of these cities to the other. Let's talk about how both of these cities compare and what you can expect living in one of these cities. So if you don't know me, my name is Dylan Good. I am a realtor in California and Florida. So always feel free to reach out if there's ever anything I could do for you in either state. So number one, let's talk about size. Los Angeles County has a population of about 10 million people in about 4,700 square miles, and it's home to many of these famous cities like I'm sure everybody knows. There's Hollywood, Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, Burbank, Woodland Hills. I'm sure you've heard of these. And Miami-Dade County, on the other hand, has about 2.7 million people in about 2,400 square miles. So not only is Los Angeles County bigger in size, it also has more people per square mile, which can actually make it feel more crowded. Los Angeles County is huge and can even take up to an hour and a half sometimes to get from one side of it to the other, which actually brings me into talking about the traffic. Of course, both of these cities have traffic. At the end of the day, they are both major cities, so there's never getting around that, unfortunately. But Los Angeles and Miami actually have different types of traffic, I must say. From my experience driving in both cities, I found myself getting into worse traffic conditions in Los Angeles, and there was times where I just felt like I was stuck on the freeway for an eternity out here. So Los Angeles definitely has worse traffic in my opinion, but on the other hand, Miami has very, I would call, passionate drivers. And when I drove for the first time in Miami, my hands were pretty much locked onto the steering wheel because I felt like I never knew what the person next to me was gonna do. I'm talking like a car could be in the far left lane of the freeway, have to exit in maybe 30 yards, and they'll still manage to find a way to swerve over and exit. I got cut off terribly my first time on the road out in Miami. Funny thing is, my girlfriend was born and raised in Miami, so she moved to Los Angeles only 4-ish years ago. And first time I got in the car with her driving, I was pretty much holding onto my seat because she still had that Miami passionate driving in her. So there's a reason car insurance is actually more expensive in Miami. So think about that one. So when I say the people in Miami are more passionate with the things they do, I mean it. Miami natives are a different breed, I'll say. It may just be because there's a different culture and mixture of people in Miami compared to Los Angeles. Miami is mixed with people from all around the world. They have Cubans, South Americans, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, pretty much from everywhere. Miami is so Latin dominant, it almost feels like you're not in the United States anymore sometimes, especially walking down like Little Havana or something. I literally feel like I'm in Cuba. It's pretty crazy of an experience. Actually, a lot of places you go in Miami, you can be expected to speak Spanish as a primary language. When I visit Doral, which is where my girlfriend grew up in a small part of Miami-Dade County, this is definitely the case. I would walk into a grocery store and I would hear the store announcements in Spanish, and the cashiers start by speaking to me in Spanish, and I'm not fluent, but I could understand it pretty well, and I'm just very slow at speaking it back. But it's pretty much the norm in certain pockets of Miami to speak Spanish first. Los Angeles definitely has a Latin influence as well, but this Latin is more of a Central American Latin. Of course, California shares a border with Mexico, so Mexico has a large influence on LA culture and food. Los Angeles is very rich in cultures, and there are multiple neighborhoods that celebrate these cultures. Like they have Koreatown, Chinatown, Little Tokyo, Little Armenia, Little Ethiopia, and there's more, but those are just the ones I could think of right now. But again, these are both major cities, so they're both expected to have a mixture of different races and culture. One difference I did notice about the people from both cities is that I feel like the people in Miami are more blunt and straight up, while people in LA are more, I don't want to offend anybody, but sometimes sensitive and timid. And I'm not saying everyone in LA is very like sensitive or timid, and it's not even something I completely noticed until visiting like other places, especially Miami, where Miami, they're pretty much like straight up to the point, tell me what you want to get out type of thing. And I think it's just something you have to go experience yourself to really understand what I mean by that. My girlfriend definitely experienced this difference when she moved from Miami to LA 4 years ago. And she grew up in Miami, so she has that Miami kind of flair to her. And she noticed that she could come off as rude to people in Los Angeles without even meaning it or even realizing it. She actually worked in a department store in Woodland Hills for a bit when she got here. And she noticed that customers would complain to her boss about her for being rude, but she had no recollection or no intent of being rude. She said when customers would ask her for where something was in the store, she would pretty much just tell them where it was, straight to the point, like I told you. And they would just take offense to it because she wasn't being so fluffy and energetic with her answer. But that's just how they speak in Miami. That's how the customer service is in Miami. So that's just something she had to adjust to moving to Los Angeles. On the contrary, we visited Miami recently and we were super hungry one day. So we went to the supermarket to get some empanadas real quick. And the worker was getting our order wrong multiple times. So Lizzie snapped, and in Spanish, she was basically saying, "Woman, I want 2 chicken empanadas and 1 beef, that's it." And I was actually shocked for a second because living in LA, a worker would probably get offended being spoken to in like kind of that direct tone. But this lady actually laughed and threw it back at her, like gave her sass back, but in a joking way. But everyone thought it was funny. Nobody got offended and she got her order right that time. But I'm not saying it's okay to be rude to people in Miami. It's just more normalized to be blunt and straight up without people getting offended, if that makes sense. Even doing like real estate transactions in Miami compared to LA, our preferred lender in Miami is a pit bull kind of guy, and I've actually seen him chew people out to get things done for us. They're not scared to fight with their life to get a deal closed. So that passion is there in business as well. LA for sure has more of a chill and laid back style from what I've seen, which isn't a bad thing. It's just 2 different wavelengths of energy, and again, something you have to experience on your own to see what I mean. Okay, so let's talk about food and what both cities have to offer. So I'm a huge foodie, so this is important to me 100%. So when I think about food in Los Angeles, the first 2 things that come to my mind is Mexican food and In-N-Out. I feel like that's the 2 things that California, Southern California is basically known for. But to me, first thing I think about, definitely Mexican food. So no doubt Los Angeles has some of the best Mexican food in the world. Of course, outside of Mexico, because you can't get more authentic than Mexico itself. But some of the Mexican places I've been to in LA, I imagine it's closest to authentic you can get. And I've had Mexican food in other states and it just doesn't hit like it does in LA. Actually, my buddy had to move to the East Coast for a military academy, and every time he visits home here in Southern California for a break from school, his first stop is immediately, no doubt, he's like, I have to get Mexican food. It's just something comforting about it, and you could tell the Mexican food out here is definitely made with love. So when I think of food in Miami, I think of Cuban food, which has quickly become one of my favorite foods as well. And Miami has a huge Cuban influence. So when I'm in Miami, it's a non-negotiable. I have to go get some Cuban food. You have to go and try it if you're out there. From the Cuban sandwiches to the ropa vieja to the croquetas, it's just a must try while you're in town. But like I said, Miami's mixed with so many different cultures that you get a huge mix of different cuisines. So me, myself, I'm actually half Peruvian, and living in the LA area, a good Peruvian place is actually hard to come by because it's not the most popular cuisine in the world. But go to Miami and there's so many successful Peruvian spots, which is amazing. If you're into Peruvian food, I highly recommend go to Ceviche 105. They have some of the best Peruvian food I've had. And in Miami in general, you could find some great ceviche, empanadas, arepas, Caribbean food, so much more. Miami is filled with cultures, so any type of food you could think of, it's probably in Miami. Also, Miami has Publix, which is a top tier grocery store. I wish we had a Publix here in LA, but hopefully one day. Okay, so let's shift over to job opportunities, pay, taxes, the financials. Los Angeles is the entertainment capital of the world. It's home to major film, TV, and media studios. So there are many jobs and careers in that profession. Doesn't mean that that field is easy to get into, because it is highly competitive. But that is where a lot of the money is in Hollywood and Los Angeles. On the other hand, Miami is a big time vacation spot. Every year, so many people come to Miami from all over the country and all over the world, and especially from the northern states like New York, to get away from the cold and just to have fun. So hospitality, like hotels, resorts, dining, bars, those are always successful out there. And actually my brother-in-law owns an Airbnb close to Miami, and he's been pulling in some crazy numbers. I'm talking like $8,000 a month on a $450,000 investment. So businesses and investments that have to do with hospitality always do pretty good out there. In Miami, there are many cruise lines stationed there, and the Miami airport is huge. So definitely those fields are always going to need some employees. Minimum wage in Los Angeles as of 2022 is at $16.04, and it's at $11 in Miami, which is almost nothing. But for someone starting out looking to make more than minimum wage, I would definitely look into working at a busy restaurant or a bar in either city, especially in Miami, where they have more of a nightlife, because people blow money on food and alcohol, which usually translates into some nice tips at the end of the night. One edge that Florida has over California when it comes to income is that Florida has no state income tax, which helps a lot. California is known to pretty much rob you of your paycheck, which is not fun at all. They have their own state income tax brackets, so that is definitely something to think about as well. Of course, income and jobs pretty much go hand in hand with cost of living, and from being in both cities, I didn't notice too much of a difference in the day-to-day things like food, clothes, dining, transportation. Gas is a little bit cheaper in Miami, but a lot of the things like that, the day-to-day stuff, are pretty comparable in both cities, but it's the housing expenses that are different. Los Angeles is so much more expensive when it comes to housing, and for example, where I live in Burbank, which is on the northern side of Los Angeles, the average 3-bedroom house is going for $1.2 million. In Miami, you can expect to pick up a decent 3-bedroom house for pretty much half the price. You can maybe get something for around $600,000, which is pretty significant in a difference. So Miami definitely takes the cake on that one. Okay, so let's talk about the weather. So I've actually talked about the differences between the weather in California and Florida in another video, but if you haven't seen that yet, let's go over it real quick. So Los Angeles has some of the best weather on the planet. And LA actually has seasons where you get a little bit of everything, which is pretty cool. LA doesn't see too much extreme weather, and when it does, it's usually from like a heat wave that we just recently had, where temperatures were up to like 110 degrees. It was pretty crazy for a couple weeks actually. LA rarely reaches those freezing cold temperatures, and it's normal for the temperature to hit down to even like the 40 degrees area, sometimes at night during those cold seasons, but that's pretty much it, nothing too crazy. LA has more of a dry climate where it mostly rains only from December to March. But overall, LA has that perfect ideal weather where you get your warm summers, you get your cool winters. It's close enough to the beach where you could go when it's hot. It's close enough to some of the mountains to hit the snow when it's cold. And Miami, on the other hand, it's mostly warm year-round, which is great for those snowbirds that come to visit when it's cold in their hometowns. But if you're not a fan of living in a warm climate all the time, Miami might not be the place for you. When it gets hot in Miami, it gets hot. And the heat is pretty much a different beast out there because of the humidity. And that humidity can make the air feel pretty sticky and thick, and it could just make you sweat so much more than a dry heat such as California's. I grew up in California, and visiting Miami for the first time when I was a kid, that humidity just smacked me because I've just never been in that much humidity before. So if you're sensitive to that type of thing and the heat, I would suggest at least visiting Miami a few different times of the year before completely moving out there. It doesn't bother everybody, but some people absolutely hate the heat Miami can have. Also, quick side note, Florida is prone to hurricanes, while California is prone to wildfires and earthquakes. So when it comes to crime and safety between both cities, Miami actually has a higher crime rate. Yes, LA is bigger and has more population, meaning overall more crime does happen in LA because there's much more people. But when you break it down to the crime percentage per population, Miami turns out to have more crime per a certain amount of people. So statistically, LA is a safer city, but this also comes down to knowledge of the cities and knowing what places to go to and what places to avoid. So that being said, Los Angeles also has a bigger homeless issue where there's about 70,000 homeless people in LA, which causes a lot of pockets in LA to be filled with homeless campsites, and the pandemic actually only caused this problem to get worse. So like I said, when planning to come to a new city, whether you're going to LA or Miami or even another city, make sure you know where the safer spots are and where those places are to avoid. Definitely visit the area before making a move if possible, and if that's not possible, it's pretty important to do your research or reach out to someone that knows the area fairly well. So those are actually all the points I have for today, and if you need any assistance moving and buying a home in either of these cities, consider me your friend. I am more than happy to see how I can help. And also, if you're moving from one of these cities to the other, I can help make your transition that much easier because I work as a real estate agent in both cities. And of course, I can't be in two places at once. So that's why I'm part of an incredible team of professionals that can be. And we love helping people move to other states or cities because we know how super stressful that could be. And we make it our jobs to pretty much guide you through that process. If you have anything to add on to this discussion, please chime in the comments below. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe. I'm gonna continue to pump out some of these more informational videos on both of these cities and the surrounding areas. So thank you so much for your time. You take care.